Have you ever lived next to someone for years, only to realize one quiet evening, one subtle glance, that everything between you had changed? This isn't just a story about roommates. It's about longing, timing, and the silent gravity that pulls two people closer when neither of them is ready to admit what's already happened. What if the love you never expected was already living under your roof? What if all it took was one ordinary moment, a brush of fingers, a passing glance, for your entire world to tilt? I never planned to fall, but love doesn't ask permission. It arrives like a whisper or a storm. And when it does, you don't walk away the same. If stories about emotion, truth, romance, longing, and awakening move you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me on this journey, because this is the kind of story that stays with you. I never thought a quiet evening could shift something so deeply inside me, but it did, and I remember the exact moment it started. I walked into our apartment after a long day, exhausted in every possible way. My heels ached, my shoulders were tight, and all I could think about was getting out of my work clothes and collapsing on the couch. The lights were low, the air soft, and I could hear the faint sound of water running in the bathroom. I didn't think much of it, but when the door opened and Jordan stepped out, something shifted. He was barefoot, hair damp, sweatpants low on his hips, and a towel resting carelessly around his shoulders. His skin still glistened faintly from the shower. He leaned against the doorway like he belonged there, his presence quiet but heavy. He looked at me with a smirk, warm eyes catching the light. "Rough day?" he asked casually, rubbing a towel through his hair. "You have no idea." I sighed, dropping my purse and kicking off my shoes. My body practically sagged with relief. "Want a drink?" I paused, then nodded. "Actually, yeah, I do." He disappeared into the kitchen and came back with a glass of red wine, holding it out. As I reached for it, his fingers brushed against mine. It wasn't a deliberate touch, but it wasn't entirely innocent either. It lingered just enough to send a spark through me, warm, quick, and unwanted. Or maybe not unwanted, just unexpected. We were housemates, friends maybe. We'd lived together for almost 2 years. It had always been easy, comfortable, predictable. Jordan was the guy everyone liked, calm, centered, always in control. He didn't try too hard. He didn't need to. His charm was effortless, stitched into every quiet smile, every smooth laugh. People gravitated to him without realizing it, including me, though I'd never admitted that to myself before. That night after he handed me the wine, we sat for a while. We talked a little, nothing deep, just the usual end-of-day banter, but something about it stayed with me, the way he looked at me, the way his voice dipped when he asked about my day, the way his eyes lingered a little too long on my face when I laughed. I went to bed unsettled, and in the days that followed, I began noticing everything I hadn't before. The way Jordan lingered in the kitchen if I was there, the way his shoulders relaxed when we were alone, the way his voice softened when he said my name. I'd catch him watching me sometimes, not with a stare, but with that kind of quiet attention that made you feel seen. And I hated how much I started noticing him back. The way his back flexed when he stretched in the mornings, the way he chewed on his pen when he was thinking, the way his laugh made the room feel smaller, more intimate. I told myself I was reading too much into it. We were just 2 people sharing a space, but I couldn't stop thinking about that touch, or the look in his eyes that night. Then one evening, I sat at the dining table, buried under work. My laptop open, papers scattered, the room dim except for a single warm lamp. I was rubbing my temples, trying to stay awake, when I heard him. "You're still up." Jordan's voice was low, slightly amused. I looked up and saw him standing by the fridge, stretching his arms overhead. His shirt lifted slightly, revealing just enough to make my heart stutter. "Yeah," I sighed, "work's been crazy." He leaned against the counter, watching me. "You know you push yourself too hard." I gave him a look, says the guy who's up at 6 a.m., to work out like it's a religion. He chuckled. Touché, but seriously, you need a break. There was something in the way he said it. Not teasing, not commanding, just gentle, like he meant it, like he cared more than he was supposed to. I hesitated, then closed the laptop. Maybe you're right. We sat there in silence. He didn't move. Neither did I. Then, without a word, Jordan leaned forward and brushed a strand of hair from my face. His fingers barely grazed my skin, but it felt like fire. I froze. You're always in your own world, Maya, he murmured, voice barely above a whisper. Sometimes I wonder if you ever slow down enough to notice what's right in front of you. I couldn't breathe. I didn't laugh, didn't tease, didn't look away, and for a moment I wanted to. I wanted to pretend it hadn't just happened. But I couldn't, because in that split second, something inside me cracked open, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. The tension between us became impossible to ignore. It didn't go away. It lived in the silences. The glances, the pauses between footsteps. Then one night, a storm rolled in. The rain was heavy, the sky lit with flashes of silver. I curled up on the couch with a blanket, a movie playing on low volume, thunder rumbling in the distance. Jordan walked in and looked at me. Mind if I join? He asked, already stepping closer. I shrugged. Go ahead. Closer than usual, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off him. We didn't speak. The movie played, but I wasn't watching it. I was too aware of him, his arm just inches from mine, the quiet rhythm of his breathing, the way the room felt thick with something we couldn't name. Then the lights went out. The entire apartment went dark. I gasped, startled. Well, he muttered, that's convenient. I laughed softly. Guess we're stuck like this for a while. Are you okay? He asked, his voice near my ear. Yeah, I said, though it came out too soft, too uncertain. There was silence again, except now even the silence felt charged, and then Jordan spoke. Maya, have you ever thought about what it would be like if things were different between us? My pulse spiked. Before I could answer, thunder shook the building. Reflexively, I reached for him. My hand found his arm, and just like that, we were closer than we'd ever been. I looked up at him. He looked down at me. He reached up, slowly, his fingers brushing against my cheek. Maya, he whispered, you don't have to say anything. I just need you to know. I could have backed away, but I didn't, because somewhere in that storm, everything changed. That night, I lay awake listening to the rain. I thought about the way his eyes held mine, the way his hand felt on my skin, the quiet way he said my name, and I knew something had been set in motion. There was no going back. The next morning, I woke before him. The rain was still falling outside, tapping softly against the windows. I made coffee and sat by the glass, watching the world blur with mist. I wasn't sure what we were now. I wasn't sure what to expect. When Jordan walked in, he paused. His eyes found mine, and then he smiled, small, almost hesitant. Hey, I said, fingers tightening around the warm mug. He walked past me, but as he did, his hand brushed mine, slowly, intentionally, and that was enough. No words, just a touch, but in that moment, I understood everything. We were no longer roommates. We weren't just friends. We had become something fragile, something real, something dangerous, something we could no longer deny. Days passed, but the feeling didn't fade. It grew stronger, deeper. Our conversations shifted. They were slower, more careful, more intimate. He looked at me like he wanted to memorize my face. I found myself watching the clock, waiting for him to walk through the door. I'd never believed in love arriving softly. I always thought it came crashing in, but this was like dusk, slow, quiet, inevitable, and now every time I walked into our apartment, it felt like stepping into something sacred, something shared, something just beginning. Love doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it's found in the quiet, in the way someone pours your wine, in the way they say your name like it's a secret. What began as simple, familiar, and ordinary slowly unraveled into something neither of us could explain, but both of us felt. And maybe that's how the best kind of love works, not forced, not rushed, just real. If you felt something while listening, if this story reminded you of someone, or something buried deep inside, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay close. There are more stories waiting, more emotions to uncover, more truths to share, and who knows, maybe the love you're meant for is already standing in your doorway, waiting to be noticed. Thank you for being here. Until next time. Hold on to what's real. Let love find you, even if it starts in the quiet.